welcome everyone. It's midnight on my area of the world, and there's some crazy people here with me who are also on my time, so they must be all these night owls. But this show is I can't even talk because it's midnight, specifically for the other side of the world who are usually sleeping during my live shows on Sunday. So I wanted to give an opportunity for those who would like to be here live and maybe have cases from their part of the world. So I started this. This is my first attempt. And I'm aiming at Asia and Oceania. So anybody over there who normally is sleeping during my shows can now be awake. And if you're here live, thank you tonight or this morning, or where for you it's morning. I'm glad you're here. I know I don't have a huge bunch of people coming live from the other side of the world because most people don't know about this. So this is a first. So I'm sure some are going to be watching this show later and they're going to say, oh, I wish I'd been there live. Well, you can be here live. I'll be back in 2 weeks. I'm going to try to do this every 2 weeks. And if it's really successful and I can stay up at 12 o'clock at night, I will do it every week, a show for the other part of the world, not just the US, Canada, the UK, who are awake when I do my shows, but great cases from India, from China, from Japan, from Australia, from New Zealand, anywhere around the world, and Hong Kong. So if you're from that part of the world who will be awake during this show, do send me your cases that you would really like me to analyze, and I will do them. So anyway, so here I am. I'm very excited to be here. Oh my God, we got so many people here May says, I hear and see you, Pat. Thank you. I always do ask that usually, so I don't just chatter on and nobody is even able to see or hear me. So, wow, Vivian, you're 10 p.m. here in Alberta, Canada. Oh, that would be true. That would be true. There are some people who are not on the East Coast where I am. So the West Coast, the West Coast of the US and Canada, it's not so bad. So that's pretty funny. So, oh my goodness, so many people here. It's just grand. So Triple Crown says midnight here in Tampa. There's a lot of night owls here. Maybe it's the crime people. I don't know. But okay, so I want to talk about exactly what I'm going to do with these shows. And before I do that, I've got to do my usual little bit here because I need to keep the show subsidized. So if you are new here today live, which I don't think you're new here today live, but if you are seeing the show later and you like it, please just do subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notifications, and do share with anybody you know who would like to learn about criminal profiling and crime scene analysis. And here you can buy a book. There are links below that supports the channel. And you can also, if you want to join the live hangouts during the week, you can, or just support the show. It's a $1 or $3 or $7, depending on your level. You can go to Patreon and join there. Okay, that's that. Now, before I do talk a little bit more about this case, I'm going to, I just want to explain one thing about talking about cases in somebody else's country, because I know many times people talk about the US and they're like, oh, in the US, you all do this. And I'm thinking, no, we don't. And then they'll say things like, why do you do that? And I go, we don't do that either. So sometimes from outside the country, people do not understand the culture of the country. They don't understand the geography of the country. They don't understand the legal systems. They just don't understand how things work. So if I'm braving talking about other countries, I'm putting myself in a position where you're going to say, Pat Brown, you do not know what you're talking about. That is not what happens in our country. So I want to say right up front, that's one of the reasons I want this live show, and I will respond to comments below, because as people comment on things, I will learn more about the countries I'm talking about, and you can correct me. Do not have a problem correcting me and say that's not actually how it works. And I'll go, very interesting. So I want that kind of input because I know I'm limited because I'm only seeing things through my eyes. As far as India goes, now I have a little bit more connection with India than some other countries. I have been. Oops, wait, hold on a second. Let me show you here. Uh, Let me have to zip down here. Where am I? Okay, trying to find my stuff here. Okay, if you can take a look at this picture. I have been to India 5 times, and I'm going to be talking about an Indian case today. So this is why I want to mention this. I have been to India 5 times. You can see me here in my sari and in my salwar kameez. I have been all over the country, everywhere from South India. Last time I was in India, well, I was in Vizag. Last time I was in India and Hyderabad and the whole lot of the South. I've also been way up in the north. I've been in Punjab, in Patiala, where I worked in a deaf school. I've also been all the way up to Kashmir. The first time I went to India was in 2003. My son was going to school there in Chennai, at the University of Madras, and he called me up and said, "Ma, I know you love India. Why don't you come and spend some time with me?" And I said, "Okay." So I went. He wanted to spend my money because he didn't have money for travel, but we went all over India and had a great time. But most of the time I've been in India, I've been with friends in India, Indian friends. So I stayed in homes and I've spent a lot of time within the Indian community as opposed to running around like a tourist. So those are a couple pictures of me, and there's a couple more of me. You can see in the middle that I eat street food. Always eat street food. Never been sick in India. Go figure. Just love that. The stuff I'm eating there is called golgappa. It's just that's my favorite thing in the world. It's one thing they tell you never eat in India, but I eat it all the time. So anyway, I just love it. And I also want to mention that I was in Delhi once, and this is a picture of me. You can see me right there in the middle, and my name up here. I was brought in to talk about criminal profiling investigative methodologies, and I had a great crowd, wonderful people there on this panel with me, and I did a whole day's talk. And I have to honestly say, there were private investigators and police investigators, and I think the CBI. I had a wonderful time, and I've done a lot of police conferences here, or I've been standing in front of a group for 2 or 3 days, and let me tell you, it's a lot easier in India. Police detectives in America give you a really run for your money. They're like, "What do you got to tell me?" But in India, everybody was so friendly, and they asked such good questions, and there was such good dialogue. I just really had a great time. It was the easiest conference I've ever done. So anyway, that's about me. And I only point that out because I just want to, as we go through some of the case today, I just want you to be aware of that. I have some knowledge of India, although not obviously the knowledge of a person who is actually an Indian citizen. So a little bit there. So Triple Crown says, "You take great pics, Pat." Yeah, and I only show you the ones that are good. I'm not stupid. You should see the other ones. But hey, I will tell you that saris and salwar kameezes, all the beautiful clothing of India, it look a whole heck of a lot better than when you're wearing a t-shirt like this. So, great clothing. I'm absolutely in love with the clothing. So, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to take. I will go back later over some of the comments. That's funny. Says you have a Japanese case for me, the murder of them, and I am not sure how to pronounce that, Miyazawa family. Interesting, very interesting. So I'm going to go back through and probably take pictures of things I need to remember later on. So it's awesome. So, okay, this is interesting. May says, "Have been thinking of going to India for yoga certification, but worried about safety. We hear so much horrific crimes against women in India." All right, so this is what I'm going to be talking about today. Oh, hi, David. You finally made one of my live shows. Yay. I have been all over India. I have been I've been on trains. Absolutely love trains in India. I'm a overnight trains in India, my favorite thing in the world. And when I try to go to sleep at night here, I put on train sounds, Indian train sounds at night, and I sleep to that. It's just great. I've taken buses. I've taken auto rickshaws. I've done private vehicles. I've done hired vehicles. I've done Ubers. Been all over India in so many ways. I have never felt unsafe in India. So this is going to be interesting because they're saying, what? But you're doing a show about a woman being gang raped on a bus. That is true. But this is one of the things I want to point out, that yes, there are problems. But we have problems in other countries too, that we can be unsafe elsewhere. I can be unsafe in the US. I can be unsafe in other countries besides India. So every country has its issues. And India certainly was upset about this particular issue. And I'm going to talk about what happened about the protest after this happened. And it was a great thing to have happened, the protest, not the crime. So India, like every other country, is trying to deal with its problems. But there are safe ways to travel in India. And so I will tell you about some of those when we get to the women safety issues. So there are things that can be done. So I will talk about that. But let's get to the actual show. Hold on one second. And I will cough through the show because, yes, I am recovering from COVID. So, if you haven't gone to my Facebook page, just a quick funny story. So I made some soup a few days ago, and it was about 4 days ago. It was really good. And then I made it the next day, and it just tasted really bland. And then I had some more other food. It just always, it really kind of tasted bland. And then, was it yesterday or the day before? Yesterday, I think it was yesterday. Anyway, there was this really bad wet spot on my sofa. And I'm like, what the heck is this? And I look up at the skylight. I'm thinking it's heavy snow and it must be leaking. And I'm looking for the leaks and I can't find it. And it's really wet. And I'm like, God, what is this? So I call my daughter up and I say, come over. I can't find the leak. And she walks up close and she goes, Ma, that's cat pee. I'm like, what? Nothing. Smelled nothing. That's COVID. I lost my taste and my smell for 3 days. I could not smell anything. So I woke up today and my daughter sent some food over and I tasted it and went, wait a minute, I can taste this. And I went and smelled all my spices. And then I went back to my couch and went, oh my God, that is cat pee. So I've got my smell and taste back, but yeah. So if I cough through the show, you know why. Well, let's get to the actual story, which is a horrific story. I'm going to talk about a few different things in this show. I'm going to talk about the case itself and the psychology of the offenders. I want to talk about the psychology of the offenders as psychopathy and also as how societal things may encourage this kind of behavior or this kind of psychopathy to develop. I'll talk about the police investigation that came right on the heels of this happening, and I also want to talk about the protests afterwards. What were the points of the protests? Were they fair? Were they unfair? And what did these protests accomplish? And so let's get started with this. I'm going to just read you one quick paragraph, just so those who have no clue about this case will now know about this case. All right. So the 2012 Delhi gang rape and murder case, this is straight from Wikipedia, of course, my favorite page because it's just the easiest, involves a rape and fatal assault that occurred on 16th of December in 2012 in a neighborhood in Southwest Delhi. The incident took place when Jyoti Singh, a 22-year-old physiotherapy intern, was beaten, gang raped, and tortured in a private bus in which she was traveling with her male friend. There were 6 others in the bus, including the driver, all of whom raped the woman and beat her friend. 11 days after the assault, she was transferred to a hospital in Singapore for emergency treatment, but died 2 days later. The incident generated widespread national and international coverage and was widely condemned both in India and abroad. Subsequently, public protests against the state and central governments for failing to provide adequate security for women took place in New Delhi, where thousands of protesters clashed with security forces. Similar protests took place in major cities throughout the country. So that's the basics of this. And then I will tell you about what happened with these 6 guys. Now, I had two major sources that I used for this particular show, along with what I had read. And one I just want to mention, it's called, well, get me out of the way here, Delhi Crime. Now, this is on Netflix, so all of you can see it. It's a fabulous show. It is a fictionalized version of what happened. There's a few things a little bit off in it that I'm like, no, that's actually not what happened. And I think they kind of exaggerated things for the purposes of the show. But the woman who plays the police, the head of the police here, she is really, really good, and represents the woman pretty well who actually was in that position. And I'll talk about her a little later. So it's just a great show, absolutely great show. And one of the number one things I learned in this show, which is just kind of a funny aside, was that every time they catch one of these guys, I would see them holding hands with the guy, like this, and pulling him along, holding hands. And I kept thinking, why aren't they using handcuffs? And so I researched that, and I did not realize that in India, handcuffs are looked down upon, only to be used in extreme circumstances that's considered inhumane. And so even if the guys are suspected rapist and murderer, or even convicted, they will hold him by the hand very tightly and walk him along. And I've never seen that in the US, because we're big on handcuffs here. So, and not in the front where we put their hands behind their back. And so it's a very interesting cultural difference and a legal difference that India has chosen as opposed to what America has chosen. And it will be interesting to determine whether there's reasons for this. Why in America, in the United States of America, we would never, ever not handcuff, because the police are usually very much afraid of maybe it's because they're all armed with weapons on their side and can't afford having the person they're arresting get hold of their weapon and using it against them. But it's a very interesting difference. And I saw that in the show, and I'm like, is that true? And it was true. So that was fascinating. Then I watched this show, and this show is called India's Daughter. This is a documentary. It was not made in India. And apparently the Indian government wasn't happy about this. And so it was not allowed in India. It was banned in India. And I think it was because, I thought it was really well done, but again, it's from the outside. So, if you're in the Indian government, you might think this makes India look terrible. I'm not sure what the exact reasoning, but apparently it's been all over the internet. So it kind of bypassed the government at some point. So a lot of people in India have actually seen India's Daughter. So the reason this is a really good show for me to work with is that I'm going to show you the 6 guys that were involved in this crime. Okay, so this is, where's his name? Oh, there. This is Ram Singh, and this is his brother. Where's his brother? Mukesh. Okay, Mukesh Singh is these guys are brothers, and then these are the other 3 adults, and then this over here is a juvenile. So those are the 6 guys, and this guy right here, Mukesh, they do an interview with him, and I'm going to go through what he said in his interview, because it's absolutely fascinating from the point of view of somebody who was involved in a horrifically violent crime and the things he says, and it's really enlightening. And I thought, oh my God, this is just great stuff. So I've got clips from I took pictures through the whole show, and so I'm just going to read you different things that he said and explain how an offender thinks like this, how a psychopath, and he is one, thinks, and how he explains himself or explains things away from himself. Absolutely, really, really interesting. So I'm going to be, this is the guy with the big mouth, Mukesh Singh, and it really is interesting. So this is what I'm going to go through to begin with. I'm going to go through the show and describe what he's saying happened in this crime and why it happened, the excuses he gives. And there's some validity to some of the things he says and some things that other people say. So I'll be going through that. Now, before I do that, though, I want to read to you. Let me find it. Where to go? Okay. This fellow here, this is the guy that was with Jyoti the night that they were attacked. Now, there's a lot of really kind of weird stuff out there about him. In the Delhi crime show, he doesn't come off well. They they're not real nice about him. I mean, he's obviously very devastated, but they say some things like he's trying to sell the story. And so there's all kinds of things going around the internet about him. But I think he went through an incredibly tragic situation, which he says he's never gotten over. And I believe him, because it had to be like one of the worst things that could ever happen to you. And I wanted to read to you what he said happened. And then we're going to go back to Mukesh and listen to what he has to say. So you'll hear it from this guy who has no reason to lie. And then we'll hear what Mukesh has to say, who has every reason to lie and twist things just a wee bit. So let me find it here. Hold on a second. I had it all set up, and of course, there we go. Then you lose things. Okay, so this is what he said about what happened that night. He says, isn't it, by the way, it's an incident he'll never forget. I wish I could have saved her that day. I tried my best, but the men overpowered me and attacked me, and I don't think I'll ever forget that. Can you imagine being in a situation where you cannot save your friend? It's horrific. So let me explain who they are to each other. The pair had met 2 years ago before through a mutual friend. On the fateful day, Jyoti gave him a call at around 1:30 p.m. and asked if he had any plans. She was full of life and enjoyed window shopping and watching movies, he said. They decided to meet at Saket City Walk. So she dressed in a brown and black woolen pullover and jeans. Now, I want to point out, it's a woolen pullover and jeans. Now, she was not wearing a super mini skirt, and she wasn't wearing a shirt going down like this with cleavage hanging out, like half of America does. She wasn't in massive high heels. So she was dressed like a college girl in a pair of jeans and a thick sweater. And they went to watch Life of Pi, which she liked very much. So meanwhile, these 6 guys are on this bus now, right? And they were going along on their bus. They were looking for some fun, and I'll explain more of that later. So there are 6 of them going to have some fun. They spotting the couple, they stopped the bus and lured them in, saying it was headed to Dwarka, their destination. I think it's Dwarka. Okay. Lured them in, saying it was going to Dwarka. Now, in the movie, it's a little strange. Supposedly, in the movie version, the bus goes by and the guy's shouting out, Dwarka, Dwarka, Dwarka. But that's not what happened. What happened is the guy got out and asked them where they were going. And they said Dwarka, and he said, "Oh, come on, sister, we're going that way." And they really weren't going that way. So they lured them in. Okay, so once in the bus, the 6 men, 4 of them who pretended to be passengers, attacked Awindra. That's his name, by the way. I didn't tell you his name. His name is, where is it? Awindra Pratap Pandey. That's his name, Awindra. Okay. So let's see, where hold on a second. I'm going to find it now. Okay. They attacked Awindra and Jyoti before dragging her to the rear of the bus, taking turns to rape her for more than 45 minutes. Eventually, the men snatched all the duo's belongings, disrobed them, dragged Jyoti by the hair, and threw them off the bus. All right. Now, what he says, now listen to what he says about how it actually happened. All right. Let me find the spot. That's kind of, all right. So after the guy got him on the bus, the guy said, "We're going to that area." And we just jumped in because they couldn't get another ride. And that's why they ended up on this bus. So it was a white bus with blacked out windows, which is concerning. And so the teenager, that was the juvenile, jumped off, and he's a kid. He's like, "Hey, where are you going?" "Oh, you're going. Oh, we need to go to Dwarka." "Okay, jump on." Seemed not so bad. These kind of buses were very common. I used them before, and we didn't think anything strange, didn't even hesitate, and we bought 2 tickets for 10 rupees each as we got on. We took a seat, they switched off the lights, and we moved on. Within 4 minutes of the lights going out, Ram Singh was the first to approach Awindra and began making lewd remarks about Jyoti. When he told them to stop, they began to slap him. One of them began to attack Jyoti. I managed to hit them a few times and tried to stop them, says Awindra, but one of the men fetched a metal rod from the back of the bus and began hitting him with it. I could hear Jyoti cry, "Help, help, help," but I couldn't do anything because they started to hit me on the head and on my legs and on my arms. And by the way, he had some broken bones. So a blow to his head immobilized Awindra, and he fell on the floor of the bus. And by the way, keep this in mind, that he fell on the floor of the bus and was immobilized. That's when they took her to the back of the bus. I could hear her cries. My eyes were open. I could hear everything, but my body was paralyzed and I couldn't move. As a wanderer lay unable to move on the floor, he heard the men say Jyoti was dead. She wasn't at that point. They turned back to him and tried to finish him off with the rod, blow after blow, and the attack went on for 45 minutes. Eventually, the bus driver stopped and they threw the couple out onto the road, naked, bloodied, and seriously injured. The group didn't care if they were alive or dead. And they laid on that road until finally somebody stopped, and then the police finally got there and they finally got to the hospital. I'm not going to go into all of that because I want to talk about what's happening actually in the case. All right, so that's the horrific scene. And I'll explain a little bit more about that, what actually happened to poor Jyoti. And you know, one of the reasons this became such a big issue, and this is one of the, I think in every country we have this problem, by the way. So this is not just an India thing. When you have somebody who is, how shall we say, a person in the community who people can relate to, especially people who have a relative amount of money, they're educated, they're going to school, something like that. You know, she was basically a medical student, physiotherapy, but she was working toward being a doctor, and she was out with a male friend going to a movie. So when this happened to her, all the college students could relate, and all the parents could relate. Now, just to be honest, there's an awful lot of women get raped and murdered in other places, and if they're very, very poor and very unknown, they get very little attention. That is true in the United States as well. So, you know, if you get a woman who goes, or a girl who is upper class who goes missing, and then the newspapers get hold of it, and the parents are really good with publicity, it gets everywhere. But you get a poor child who maybe lives in a slum area of the United States, or some very, very rural area in Appalachia up in the mountains, and she gets raped and murdered. It's like, oh, that's a shame. I hope they catch the guy. So we have the same problem in America. So who you are sometimes makes a difference on how good an investigation you get and how much media attention you get. And in this particular case, the way it happened and to whom it happened just really got to people. And so that's why it became such a thing. Not that it shouldn't be for every woman that this happens to, but this is why this particular case became so, people became so enraged over it. So that I just think that's really important to note. And it was a good thing that people started, really talking about what's happens for the safety of women in India and the rest of the world, because none of us are necessarily safe anyplace. So now let's get on to this. I'm going to just check in with you guys before I start in with Mukesh and his oh, look at this. Lisa's here. Shauna's here. Oh, all kinds of great people here. Oh, my goodness. Kabele. I can never pronounce your name. Kabele. I'm not sure how that works. Annie's here. My God. What are you doing up, Annie? Oh, good. Ms. Leah's here. I'm like, I don't know. I cannot believe David's here. I cannot believe so many people are here who are like on the East Coast of the United States or in the UK are like, you should be sleeping. So anyway, so this is the basics of the case. Now I'm going to get into this guy. Now, as a profiler, I'm listening to this guy and I'm like, wow. And you can listen. I have the links below. Go get this documentary. Go watch the Delhi crime show. I mean, it's just great stuff. But this guy, it's like, these are the kind of interviews that a profiler would like more people to hear and to understand. So let me tell you what Mukesh says and his defense team, which is quite appalling. All right, so let me say, okay, he did get, by the way, he got convicted of rape, unnatural sex, and murder. So he got nailed. All right. Now, the first thing he says, which is an interesting one, you can't clap with one hand. It takes two hands to clap. Now, y'all know it takes two to tango. What is he saying? Hey, you can't just blame the guys. Women, it's the women's fault too. So he's blaming the victims. It takes two to tango. If it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have done this to her. Very psychopathic way to think. Psychopaths love to blame victims. Even serial killers say they have the funniest ways of blaming their victims sometimes. They'll say things like, I knocked on the door and I was just going to ask her if she wanted to, wanted me to do some handiwork around the house. And she opened the door and she was so nasty. and she just spit at me, and I had to punch her in the face, and then, well, then I had to rape and kill her. And of course, probably that did not happen, but they'll say it happened. So blame the victim is a very, whoops, hold on a second, I just knocked my phone off. Hold on, hit the side. Okay, blame the victim. Oh, then he says, going on with that, a decent girl wouldn't roam around at 9 o'clock at night. A decent girl wouldn't do that. So he has already decided that there's only so many ways somebody should behave, and that if she doesn't behave that way, she's not decent. And that is not also, again, in other places in the world, like in the US, a guy who's psychopathic might say, well, if she hadn't gotten drunk, and staggered down the street, she wouldn't have attend, and the clothes she was wearing, she was just she dressed like a slut. So, I mean, she's drunk and dressed like a slut. What does she expect? That kind of thing. Or she teased me, therefore she deserved to be raped. And then he goes on, a girl is far more responsible for rape than a boy. That she lures him in, and he can't help himself. I mean, it's basically her fault. If she wouldn't do those things, it wouldn't happen. Let's see. Oh, and then let me show you this guy. This guy, oh my Lord, there are some defense lawyers in the U.S. which I think are like disgusting human beings. So it's just, I mean, there are defense lawyers who do what one would consider giving a proper defense to a person who has been accused. I know there have to be defense lawyers, and there are some very good defense lawyers. There are also some defense lawyers who don't seem to have a lot of ethics or decent morals. And I'll be talking about one of them on Sunday by the name of Jose Baez, the Casey Anthony case. But this guy, holy God, M.L. Sharma, oh Lord, unattractive fella too. Okay, guess what this guy says? I mean, he might as well just join in with the gang. I think if he had been on the bus, he would have been number 7. The moment she came from her house with a boy who was neither her husband nor her brother, she left her morality and reputation as a doctor. So going out with a man means your reputation is destroyed, even if you're a doctor. As well as the girl's morality also in the house, and she came out just like a woman. Okay, so if you're a doctor, you would only go out with your brother or something. But if you go out as a woman, that just means you're available to anybody. Okay, interesting concept, creepy M.L. Sharma. Really, really creepy. Now, just to point out something about that. That, again, is not isolated to India. There are many places in the world, and including in parts of the U.S., where when a woman does not have protection when she goes out, she does become a target. And one of the problems you have when you're talking about females and safety is that, on one hand, of course, they should have the right to go out and about their business with whomever they darn well please at whatever hour they please, to go to a movie if they please, and not think that they have, somebody should think they have the right to be raped. Of course not. But there are safety issues, unfortunately, because you're dealing with whatever community you're dealing with and whatever lowlifes are in that community. So you may have a community that in general it's not like it's a bad community. And that can be anywhere in the world. It can be in a poor community. It can be in a rich community. It can be in a subcultural community or a community of immigrants from another location. But the problem is when you go into that community, most of the people are fine, but there's always that element of that community. And when you're going about, that element will see you in a certain way. So sometimes, unfortunately, there are certain things you have to take precautions to do. And I certainly, one of the things I've always pointed out to people is you have to look at what kind of clothing you should wear, even though you should be able to wear whatever you want, what kind of clothing you should wear in the location you're at. So like when I was in Mexico, for example, I was in a major city and I saw nobody wore shorts. Women did not wear shorts. they wore pants. I said, I wore pants. I went to a beach once in Mexico, and the women weren't wearing just a bathing suit. They had T-shirts on. I was about to take my T-shirt off. I'm like, oh, okay, don't do that. In India, I wear a sari or a salwar kameez always. I dress appropriately for my age, and in India, I don't wear something that just doesn't work there. When I travel in Egypt, I'm a hijabi. I cover my head. I wear long sleeves because that's what makes people comfortable around me. And also, there are those elements of the community where some more modern thinking people might say, hey, because when I was in Cairo, I went over to the university and I saw young girls in pants and short sleeve shirts and stuff like that. I'm like, dang, but they knew where they could go dressed like that, these college girls. I, on the other hand, was visiting, and I was walking down the streets alone because I didn't have anybody with me. So I made sure I went where there were women and children, not just men. I made sure I only went onto the main street when the women and the families were shopping, and I dressed appropriately. And I was treated very well. And I'm not going to get into whether it's right or wrong, to have to wear a hijab and to cover as much as I had to cover. But for safety's sake, that's what I did. So there are unfortunately, these situations where it may not be right what could happen, and may not be right the way this element thinks. But the fact is sometimes they think that way. And I'll get more into that as to why these 6 thought the way they thought. All right. So let's get back to, maybe I'll go back to Mukesh. Yeah, let's go back to, let's go back to Mukesh. All right. So now what is he saying? Boy and girl are not equal. Housework and housekeeping is for girls. Not roaming in discos and bars at night. Doing wrong things and wearing wrong clothes. About 20% of girls are good. Wow, okay. I'm not sure what the 20% is. Maybe it's just relatives. And then we get back to this character. He says, a female is like a flower. It gives a good looking, with very soft performance, pleasant. But on the other hand, a man is just like a thorn, strong and tough enough. The flower always needs protection. Okay, he's got a point there. And unfortunately, it has a point there that women, it sucks sometimes just to have to tell you the biological truth. Well, we don't have the strength of most men. We don't. We're not as strong as them. I keep pointing this out to women who take these self-defense classes. I'm like, they give these self-defense classes and they teach women how to punch. Boom, boom. They always punch wrong. They always punch like a girl. They go like this. They don't know how to actually punch. And they teach them how to kick in high heels. I'm like, they have no strength. They do the techniques are bad. But the real problem is that they are featherweights. So if they're going out jogging on a trail and a big guy jumps out of the bushes, he's a heavyweight. If you were in a boxing match, you don't put heavyweights in with flyweights or featherweights. You don't. You put a heavyweight in with a heavyweight in. With a heavyweight, you have them equal, because that way you have a fair fight. You put a flyweight in with a heavyweight, he's going to be down in the first round with probably brain damage. So that's just the way it is. And women tend to be in the lightweight category, and the men tend to be in the much middleweight, heavyweight category with stronger muscles and all of that. It's a fact. So the problem is, we have unfortunately a bit of a handicap in that we can probably not fight off men as well as we would like to. So we do have a safety issue, and so that is why we have to sometimes as females be careful where we go, and maybe in our homes we have to make sure we have security systems, or have a weapon in the home to protect ourselves, or have lots of people around us, husbands, brothers, family, at least a bunch of family people, so that we're not alone in there, where the serial killer in the US just loves to go and look for the house at the end of the block where there's one woman and a cat. And he's like, I'm going in there. He's not going to go in a house that's got 6 family members and a big, huge dog and the NRA gun picture on the front of the door. And 2 pickup trucks. He's not going there. He's going to go for the lady with the cat. So there is a safety factor. And so this guy's pointing out something, okay, there's some truth to that. Just the way he says it makes you want to punch him, though. So let's go take a look at now what he says about his brother. Now, I thought this is really kind of interesting. So now he's going to talk about his brother. And now Ram Singh is his brother. All right. And Ram Singh, if you go, he's this. If you go back to this picture, he's this guy over here. That's at least I think that's him because there were two guys in the picture, and I'm pretty sure they're aiming at him. If it's the wrong guy, I'm in trouble. Anyway, these two are brothers. Ram Singh is. Let me get the age. I think Ram Singh is the older brother. Hold on one second. Just let me get the ages of the guys. Okay. Where are these guys? Find their names here. Victims, arrests. Okay. So yes, Ram Singh, he's 30, and his 26-year-old brother Mukesh. Okay. So by the way, he's actually the driver of the bus in general. And we're going to talk about the police case in a minute. But for some reason, Mukesh was driving the bus that night. At least that's supposedly the way it went. He's driving. And he says this about his brother. Now, his brother never gives up any information about any of the guys. He's like, I'm not a snitch. On the other hand, his crappy little brother is the biggest snitch ever. he's like horrible because he's trying to blame everybody else but himself because he's trying to get out of getting basically getting hung is what he's trying to do. He's trying to save his butt. So he says, Ram Singh is my brother. After drinking, he used to abuse. Let me go back to our character here so I can put him up here. After drinking, he used to abuse and fight. He breaks all limits. He's capable of anything. Now, that's interesting because then he says of the next guy, Vinay. Vinay is one of the other guys. Vinay was always fighting. There is nothing good about him. Now, wait a minute. So your older brother is a terrible person and will do anything. He's dangerous. And Vinay, one of the friends, is worth nothing. He's evil and dangerous. But you, Mr. Wonderful Guy who never does anything wrong, hang out with these guys and get on a bus to party and do things. You're so innocent. Yes. Okay. So Vinay is also attacked women before and chased after girls and harassed them and all that. Another guy is named Pavan Gupta. And this guy he had a fruit stand and he also liked to fight. He used to hang around up the bus, chat and roam around with us. And then there's another guy named Akshay Thakur. Thakur. Anyway, Akshay, he also used to help on the bus. He'd clean, wake my brother, make tea, bring milk. He has a wife and baby. He cries and asks, what will happen? Well, I don't know. What happened to the woman on the bus? Oh, yeah, you raped and killed her. Yeah. What will happen to your wife and baby? I don't know. So then there was a juvenile on the bus. The juvenile is 17, which isn't so juvenile in my opinion. And he gets a separate case and he ends up only getting 3 years, which really ticked a lot of people off. He also helped on the bus. He used to clean. He was very sharp at tricking people onto the bus. Oh, I love this statement. Now think about this. He was very sharp about tricking people onto the bus. Oh, so this wasn't an isolated incident? How many people do you think they harmed? Now, right before this happened, they actually had another guy they got on the bus and they robbed him. And so they beat and robbed another guy before they got Jyoti and her friend. So this was a regular event. So during the day, it was a school bus. Just lovely to think of your children hanging out with the creepy driver, which is not Mukesh, but his brother. But after the day is over, that bus is not supposed to be in service. It's supposed to be parked. But hey, they had a bus available. So they used the bus apparently to trick people onto the bus and rob them and beat them. And God knows if there's other women who were raped and thrown off buses before who didn't report to the police, because he'll tell you why. Now, what Jyoti should have done if she wanted to survive. He'll tell you that in a bit. So he was very sharp, the juvenile, at tricking people onto the bus. Mm-hmm. So now he goes on. He's going to give a little explanation of why all of them have issues. And so he's going to go into the issue about poverty. So they live in this slum here, and it is a slum. Just take just a minute here. I'm just going to see if you all have anything to say before I talk about this issue. Somebody said Jose Baez is a real character. Yeah, he is. I'm going to be very careful about some of the comments up. You can have them in the chat room, but I'm going to be careful what I put up here, just because I'm not sure what we're talking about here. Hold on one second. Yes, this is correct. The victim did have a man with her, but there were 6 men with an iron bar against them. You can't win, can you? I mean, you're outnumbered, and there's just no way. There's just nothing they could do. They were trapped, absolutely trapped. Oh, and it was the wrong man, you see. Now, this is what's funny. This is what you can't trust about psychopaths. So he says, oh, well, it's because she shouldn't have been on the bus with a man who was not a relative. What if it was her brother? Do you think that necessarily they would have not raped and murdered her and beat the brother to death? I mean, then they would have come up with a different excuse. So you can't necessarily trust that. That they didn't cover their faces. Somebody said the only one the face was covered was the juvenile. That's the only one. And yeah, it's kind of a sickening, because he was definitely in the U.S. He definitely would have probably been in prison he would have gotten tried as an adult. That's what we do here with a 17-year-old who was a rape and murderer. Get tried as an adult. So yes, he shouldn't have been released. Yeah, he sure shouldn't have. I don't know what's happening to him now. He works in a kitchen. His family will have nothing to do with him. So rah for the family. I'm glad about that. So now, okay. MK says they weren't even worthy to live in a slum. This is true. And I want to show you a couple pictures, because this is one of these things where, again, the concept of, if you're poor, that you're more liable to do horrible things, or you have it's a understanding why you did terrible things, because you had a terrible life. There's a mixed truth in that. But this is what I want to point out. Now I want to show you a place I was in India. Where's my pictures? Where'd they go? Okay, that's weird. Hold on one second. How did they all go missing? I had this happen last time, and it was so frustrating, because, they've gone missing on me. Darn, I can't show them to you. I moved them over, and somehow sometimes weird stuff happens. Isn't that weird? Anyway, I had these wonderful pictures. So I want to tell you about it, though. I went to this location in India with friends, and it looked very much like this. It was very close buildings together. Everything was you could barely get through the alleys, and there's people washing clothes in the alleys, and all clothes hanging all over the place. Went up these little stairs into the home. I had one room, and we all sat on the bed. The only one bed in the room, and we all sat on the bed and ate food together, and it was delicious, and we had a great time. And when we left, the whole community came out. I have this wonderful picture of everybody waving goodbye. Everybody was so sweet. Now, the interesting thing about that is the house we visited was an elderly woman who was the mother of one of my friends, and he had gone to America. She had worked very hard in that. She lived in the slum, but she worked very hard to get sponsorship so he could get education. And he did get the education, and he went to America, and he became a very successful businessman. And now he helps out children in India get a good education. He has an organization called upliftachild.com. And it's Uplift a Child, but you can go to upliftachild.com and then sponsor children there. And I went with them, and I saw all the different schools in India. It was grand. That they had in India, not all the schools in India, the schools that they were supporting in India. And so I had a wonderful time. I was there for about a month. And anyway, we went to visit his mom, and because he had made money, he went and he bought a house, a very nice house in a gated community. And it was lovely. It had like 5 bedrooms and had a beautiful kitchen. And it was in a very, very peaceful, quiet, guarded, gated community. He moved his mother there, and she couldn't take it. She was there for like a few weeks and said, I'm going back because I'm so lonely here. There's nobody here. I want my friends. I want the community. I want the hubbub. And I was in both places, and personally, I preferred the slum too. I liked that whole community. It was like so warm-hearted, and I was having such a great time there. And I liked a lot of people around me, so I enjoyed it. Now, that doesn't mean it's an easy life. Don't let me not say that. People living there are struggling. It's a very, very tough life. But they do their best to help each other, raise their families, and are there problems? Of course, in every community that's struggling financially, you're going to get issues with substance abuse. You get issues with lack of employment. You get all kinds of things go wrong. People can't get an education. The children run the streets. I mean, there are things that go wrong. Hold on a second. Leftover coronavirus. Hold up. Love to do shows and cough through them. Oh my God. I'll try to recover. Okay, so one more second. Oh God. All right, so every community the more people struggle in a community, the more there's a high crime rate. That's a fact. And there's also can be a higher level of psychopathy that develops. And why does that develop? Why does it develop more? It's because when a child is not taken care of as well, when perhaps there's no father in the home, or perhaps there's violence in the home, or perhaps there's not enough food in the home, too many children in the home, there's terrible circumstances where can you sleep? In some places in India, you'll have people sleeping under the flyover, which is overpass. Just sleeping on on the footpath there, just the whole family, and it's a tough way of living. So some of those children grow up with what we would call attachment disorder, which sometimes even in a rich family you have attachment disorder, where the child just doesn't get the kind of attention it needs from the mother and the father, but also often from the mother as it's growing up, and then the harsh life along with that causes them to lose a level of empathy, and to get a growing rage of why don't I get what I want in life, and why these people get it, and then when you see the disparities, when you see massive disparities, you get a lot of anger, and then you can get to a point where the rules that society thinks you should live by, you don't think you should live by, because you don't think you're going to get your which do you. So you're going to go get it whatever way you can, and that might be stealing, it might be raping, it might be whatever, cheating, because you think you have a right to it, and there's not probably another way you're going to get it. And then that happens in all societies, not just India. So when you are born into a situation where the poverty is worse, one more time. When poverty is extreme, then there are higher levels of criminality, and higher levels of psychopathy. So the problem is when in this particular case, most of these young men here were actually had some sort of job. They were actually earning money. So they didn't appear to be starving at that moment, and they could afford to get liquor and food, and they were making some money, but they weren't getting some things that they thought they should get. And even the guy Ram Singh, not Ram Singh, Mukesh, he'll explain, let me go back to Mukesh, and he'll explain some of the things he doesn't think he's getting. Okay. Let me go back to him. Where are you, Mukesh? All right, let me pull that guy back up. So we'll go back to Mukesh. Here he is. All right. Now, so he says, me and my brother lived in the Ravidas colony in Puram, Arcade Puram. Okay, let's see what he has to say about this. Pavan and Vinny also lived there. And so on the day of this incident, the juvenile came for the first time since he left the job on the bus. And Akshay had been hanging out at our place and just watched the bus. My brother came around at 5 or 6, and he said, let's cook. I brought alcohol. So he drank a lot. Heavy drinking. They drank a whole bottle. And then they met with the other guys, and let's see. And they said, we've got some money. This is an interesting statement. Let's go to GB Road and have some fun. I don't know what they're having, what GB Road fun they're having. Why in GB Road are they having fun? What was their fun? Then it goes on. GB Road, that's where wrong things are done. Wrong things are done on GB Road. Really? Okay. So now he explains how this all went down. That girl was with some unknown boy. I'm not a family member. Took her on a date. Now I got to put the creepy lawyer again. Believe me, this lawyer, I mean, this guy just cracks me up. I'm like, man almighty, I wonder if he got a job after this. In our society, the lawyer says, we never allow our girls to come out from the house. Oh my God. Okay. This is not true in India, that the girls aren't allowed out of the house. In his mind, in his part of society, which might be his home, he doesn't let girls out. And here's another guy called AP Singh. I don't have his picture up here. He says, it's very important, it's very necessary that she should go outside, but she should go with the family members. And he explains the family members. She should not go in the night hours. So there's two lawyers, both of them saying the same things. And then the mother, I really like the mother in the show of Jyoti. She's just, it's just absolutely tragic. The mother and father of Jyoti, she was the oldest, and I think she has 2 brothers, and they did not have much money. And the father sold his ancestral lands to pay for education for his daughter, and that was something that was rarely done. And he said, I just don't believe, I cannot treat my daughter differently than my sons. And he just adored her. And he's like, I couldn't look at her face and do that. And they just were fabulous parents. And they worked so hard to get her to be able to go to school. And they did that. I mean, they're wonderful parents. And then the mother says, wherever there's a crime, the girl is blamed, and that's, it's the boys who should be asked, why did they do this? Well, the boys say, because the girl made us do it. No, and then you go back to creepy lawyer guy, this guy, and he says, this is interesting too. They were under the imagination of the filmy culture. Now, if you're not from India, you won't know what filmy culture means. That means the culture of films. And that would be like Bollywood films, the big industry in India. And in the Bollywood films, especially the more modern Bollywood films, there are girls that look like college girls who are wearing jeans and little tops. And there are some girls with less clothing dancing around, and boys and girls fall in love, and girls go outside the house. And oh my God, you see, they've been polluted by films. And in which they can do anything. Now, getting back to Mukesh, he says, I haven't slept with anyone just once in the village. That was the first time, and after that, it never happened again. About 5 years ago. And then he says, the girl I met in the village said that we won't kiss because kissing is bad. So I don't know who this girl was, whether the girl was actually raped by this guy, because who knows that she really this one girl just decided she was just automatically just going to go have sex with him. And that was the one time, and she just walked away. I'm not believing this guy. So he's basically saying, outside of that one girl, he's a virgin. And he hasn't had sex with anybody for 5 years. Okay, now, and that may be true because, and that we have the same problem in the U.S. with what we call incels. Incels are basically guys who can't get laid, essentially. They're like, maybe they're just very unattractive. Maybe they're very, extremely obese. Maybe they're just not good around women. Whatever it is, they don't get, the women are not attracted to them, and they don't get sex. They are having trouble getting a girlfriend and getting sex. Now, mind you, that's not always true. It may just be that what the women that they want are women that are unrealistic for them. In other words, some guys think no matter what, they deserve to have a beauty queen, not the girl down the street who also is heavy and maybe is not, you know, traditionally beautiful. Uh, so you don't want her. I mean, so and essentially, there's always sort of in many societies some woman that you can eventually get, including prostitutes. But apparently, if you're maybe too poor, and maybe just and you're in a society where women aren't so likely just to run around and date you and have sex with you, you may not be getting sex. Now, that makes you think that you have the right for it, and if you think that people who have more money than you, they have those opportunities and you do not. Even the guy that was married with a wife and baby, he might have thought, well, I want more than her. She's a village girl. I would like that college girl. I never get to have a college girl, and I want what the rich people have. And she wasn't rich, mind you. She was, her family was poor. But at that point in time when she got on the bus, she was wearing, a pair of jeans and a sweater. She was with a guy. They'd gone to the movies. She was obviously a college girl. So she had probably the demeanor of a college girl at that point. And to somebody who's extraordinarily poor and has not had education, she does seem more upper class. So she's the girl you never get. And sometimes serial killers in America have that same thing. A lot of times, outside of prostitutes, which are easy targets, you often find that when a serial killer picks a girl to rape and murder, it's usually a pretty small, fairly attractive young girl. You know what I mean? Because it's his cheerleader. It's the girl who never gives him the time of day. He wants to take the trophy. He doesn't want, a real unattractive girl. He probably, so it's an ego thing. So for these guys, they wanted the power and control. That's what a lot of this always is. It's about power and control. And when you don't have much power and control in society, and if you've got that psychopathic thing going and you're not very empathetic toward others, and you think those other people don't deserve what they got, then you want the power and control. You want to take it away from them and bring it to yourself. So he says basically, oh, well, I haven't had sex in 5 years. So, but then he says, get this. Then he says, so the 20 minutes of the incident, I was driving the bus. Now, I'll explain the police thing in just a second about how they caught him. My brother was the main guy. He so threw his brother under that bus. My brother was the main guy. Oh, Lord. They hit the boy, and he just hid between the seats. Oh, I love that one. Remember the word just? I always tell people just. When a psychopath says just, a lie is coming up. He just hid between the seats. What an insult. So in other words, he's trying to demean the boyfriend. He didn't even try to help his girlfriend. He didn't even try to help his friend. He was such a little wimp. He just hid between the seats and let us do things to her. They missed the part, he's leaving out the part where he beat the guy with a metal rod. The girl was screaming, help me, help me. My brother said, don't stop the bus, keep driving. They hit her and dragged her to the back, and then they went turn by turn. First the juvenile and Rama Singh. After that, Akshay and the rest went. The juvenile put his hand in her and pulled out something long. Well, what happened there was they used a long metal rod, and after they raped her, they inserted the metal rod into her orifices over and over again. And what he pulled out was her intestines. That's how brutal this crime was. Then they tried to get rid of her. So first they tried the back door, but it didn't open. So they dragged her to the front and threw her out. Now, get this. My drunk state wore off completely. I couldn't even control the steering. I don't even know what that means. I only drove the bus. Okay? Now, I find that really interesting. It's a lie that my brother or Akshay took the steering. Only I drove. People say this happened and that happened, that the driver was changed. Show me how we changed drivers. And I'll accept I also went to the back and killed her. Okay, so he's saying, you can't prove that we changed drivers. And he's right. You can't prove it because there's not a camera on the bus, right? And I don't think the male friend could at that point see exactly who was doing what. And poor Jyoti was, not, she just knew people were attacking her, not exactly which one. So now I'm thinking, everybody's having a good time, but this guy, and he's not going to say, hey, I want my turn. Somebody take the steering wheel for a minute. Let me have some fun. But he knows nobody can prove that he actually left the wheel. So he's saying, since you can't prove it, I'm going to say I didn't do it. He's trying to get out of rape, and he's trying to get out of murder. He's trying to say I only drove the bus, as if that's an okay thing to drive the bus around and let your brother and his friends rape and murder a woman. That's okay, I guess. But at least he's trying to lower his sentence. Guess what? Didn't work. No. So then he goes on some more. Oh no, this is actually the father of Mukesh and Ram Singh. Now, let's see what the father says. It was Akshay Thakur and the juveniles' fault. They brought alcohol in the bus. Oh, okay. So your crummy sons, your crummy rapist murdering sons, not their fault because somebody else brought liquor? Yeah, okay. And the mother says, yeah, it's the fault of those four, not my boys. So I guess you can see what kind of home they grew up in. So they blamed everybody else but themselves. Let's see. Oh, then supposedly, this is the other thing he does interesting. He blames the juvenile for ripping out the intestines and throwing out the intestines. And this is the claim. Let me find this one. Okay. By the way, he just said, we agreed no one would say anything. Well, that didn't work out well because he ratted everybody out. There was a lot of blood on the seats, blood on the floor. And then he says, Akshay and the juvenile cleaned the blood off. And then, when he went home, he just went to sleep. Because, interesting, a lot of people who are that kind of criminal and that kind of psychopathic can turn things off just like that and don't care and go to sleep. He says, I can't say why this accident happened. Dude, it's not an incident or an accident. It's a criminal act. Mainly to teach them a lesson. Because that's what you needed to do. Okay. Now, about the rod thing. This is also very interesting. They said that a rod was put inside her. Wrong. He put a screwdriver in her, wrapped in cloth, to remove the evidence. Okay. Now, now this is a kind of a gruesome thing to think about, but okay. So rather than the rod being, he took a screwdriver, covered it with some cloth, and I guess the theory here is he's going to do like this and get all the DNA and semen and everything and then remove it. But somehow the screwdriver got stuck in there because that's what screwdrivers do. Okay. And so he had to put his hand in. Now, if you have to put your hand in somebody, you've already done a lot of damage. And her intestines came out. Well, if you're just doing this with a screwdriver, intestines aren't falling out. So I'm sorry, that rod was in use because obviously that piece of metal went straight through into her whole cavity there. It's horrific. But he's trying to, why is he trying to downplay the rod thing? Is because he's trying to get rid of the violent act of absolutely the most violent act against a woman that can possibly be done, and that they destroyed her intestines, and that's one of the reasons she never survived because her body functions couldn't even work. And it was gruesome, of course, because he pulled her out of somebody, blaming the juvenile, pulled him out of her body and tossed him away. And then he says, "Present truth is truth." That guy wouldn't know truth if it hit him. We accept. Oh, see, he's willing to admit certain things that we put a screwdriver in. So say it was a screwdriver. Oh, we're going to lie. It's a screwdriver. So go ahead and accept our lie. Because that's all that happened. That's all that happened. I was driving the bus. I never touched her. Those four guys raped her. And then they tried to just get some evidence out of her body with a little screwdriver. And I don't know how the heck her intestines just fell out of her. Don't know how that happened. All right. Yes. Now, there's a guy here who worked in the prison with him, and he came up with a very reasonable theory on this. He says, the main mental setup for these kind of guys, it's our right. We're just in an enjoyment mode. And I've always pointed out, people say, how could they commit a crime like this? Because it's fun. It's fun for them. It's the power, the control, the thrill. They love it. It's fun. They don't like getting caught, but it's fun. And probably the mistake they made this time was they picked somebody who was immediately missed, and therefore, the huge police investigation ensued right away, and figured it out. Oh, and he says we have a right, and everybody has a right to enjoyment. So rich guys have a right to enjoyment, and we're poorer guys, and a lot of guys have the right to a wife and a girlfriend. They get to have sex, and we don't get to have sex, but we have that right to have some enjoyment. But and he points this out. Big people, this is the therapist guy, the psychiatrist guy. Big people, somebody who has money do it by payment, and there's a truth in that. The rich people can buy things. They can get married. They can impress women. They can hire prostitutes if necessary. They can do it by payment. We have the courage, so we do it with our courage. That's what they feel, and I agree with that man. I think he's got a pretty good idea. So then he says, going back to this guy here, my brother has done such things before. Oh, see, now he's blaming his brother again and saying his brother's a rapist. But this time his intention was not to rape or fight. Okay. He had the right to explain to them. He asked the boy why he was out with the girl so late at night. And the boy said, "It's none of your business," and slapped him. Now, you see, the male friend said that they started harassing Jyoti, and he asked him to stop, and these 6 guys slapped him. Now, this character is turning it around, saying he was the one that slapped them because he wouldn't answer a simple question about why the girl was out at night. There was fighting, beating those who raped and raped. And they thought that if they do wrong things with them, they won't tell anyone out of shame. Now, that's correct. One of the problems that people have been complaining about, especially the women in India, is that women are so ashamed of what happens to them. And this is true in the United States as well. Sometimes women are shamed when they are raped, and they don't think the police are going to believe them, or they know there's not enough evidence, so they just stay silent, and the guy goes on and continues to rape. So if you're ashamed and you think I'm never going to get married, people are going to look down on me, you allow the rape to happen and you go home. Now, he says that when she was being raped, she shouldn't have fought back. She should have been silent, and she should have allowed the rape. And then they would have just dropped her off after doing her and only hit the boy. So you see, again, the girl was even responsible for the brutal things they did to her. Because she fought back, they had the right then to stab, push an iron rod into her body and destroy her inner parts. They had that right because she had the indecency to refuse. But this is a way that a psychopath will think. So that's how horrifying that is. Now, now you've got the whole picture of how creepy this guy is. I want to talk just a little about the investigation, which was amazing, by the way. And when you watch the Delhi crime, if you see that, you'll see, I mean, it is not quite accurate, but it gives you the feeling of how much effort they put into this really, really quickly. Did a fabulous job. And what they were able to do was they took a look at, they got a description of the bus, and the bus being a white bus with the dark windows and a little bit of writing. They got some idea about the bus. And then what they did was they started looking at the CCTV cameras facing the highway. And one of the things they noticed was this one bus went by twice. And it's like, that was just not normal, because usually going in a direction and coming back. But this one went around and showed up twice. And they're like, whoa, something's wrong with that. And this is what the guys were doing. They were going around in a circle while they were raping her. So they were able to narrow that down. They had like 60 different buses. Then they figured out they talked to a lot of people. They figured out it was a school bus. They found the lot the school bus was in. And then Ram Singh was running from the bus. So they caught the first guy within, I think, the first day. And they wrapped this up. And within a few days, they had the guys. It was just amazing. And they had a lot of evidence they were able to find. They had I think they had they caught one of the guys. They had one of they had the I think a girl's phone. So they were able to they got bite marks from the girl was bit. Sadly, was bit all over. They got bite marks that matched, so they did that forensics. Just did a stunning job of just wrapping up this case really, really quickly. And so it was just, I just think it was fabulous. CCTV really makes a difference. I mean, it truly does. And I think that now that we're seeing more and more CCTV, we're able to track vehicles. And that's in the US. I know, certain cases I've seen where they've seen a car, the attack happen, and then they've been able to go from either a street CCTV or from hotels and houses and even those little doorbell cameras. And they've been able to see the vehicle go all the way down the street where it's going all the way to the person's house. And so CCTV is going to be one of the most helpful things in solving crimes. And luckily in India, they got a lot of good CCTV, thank God. And so they really did fabulous work on this case. And so then you think, well, they did such good work. Why were these protests? Why did the protests go crazy like this? And they did. The protests were huge. Let me just show you a little bit about the protests. So it was like the next day, it started looking like this. The people came out, just huge amounts of people, just everywhere. The college students came out. They were very, very angry that this could happen. They were concerned about that women don't have the right to be able to go around and be free. And then they're angry that, don't teach me what to wear, teach your sons not to rape. Because why do women have to always bear the brunt of this? And then this one, shame Delhi police allow rape. And I want to mention that one because the police could not have prevented this. I mean, it would be a wonderful idea if the police could always be everywhere so that no matter where you go as a female, there's a police officer just happen to be standing there ready to save you. But reality is, I mean, it's just not enough police officers in the world to do that. And so, it's only after the fact, unfortunately, that then the investigation could be done, but you might be dead by then. So it is very unfortunate. You can have a good police presence and a good CCTV presence, which can lower the amount of crime because criminals don't really like to commit crimes where they think they're going to be seen and they're going to be caught. So yes, if you have cops on the beat, where you have police officers on a beat, so that area becomes safer. And then if you have CCTV cameras around and the criminal knows that. In this particular case, because it was dark and at night and they were riding around on this bus, they just figured, the couple was standing there by themselves. There were no police officers in sight. And this is, again, what happens when people say, how does a serial killer, this girl came out of she came out of work at 9 p.m. at night and other people were coming out and all of a sudden she just vanished. How did the serial killer get her? And this is how. The serial killer may not plan to get a girl that night. What happens is he's surveying the neighborhood. He comes back day after day, night after night, and most of the time he can't get anybody alone. But the one time there's a break or suddenly there's nobody around but that one girl, that's when he's got his opportunity. Same thing here. They didn't get every girl on the street or every couple on the street. It was just that couple became available at that moment in time. And they had committed other crimes before. So I'm going to guess that driving around at night without a bus, every once in a while, they found somebody alone, somebody willing to get on the bus, and that's when they got them. So you can't patrol everywhere. So patrols do help. Strict laws do help where you know that their chance and good police forces, like in this case, they got all 6 of them. And what happened, and I'll tell you what happened to all 6 of the guys. So outside of that juvenile who got out after 3 years, which is to say they weren't happy about it either, but there was nothing they could do because under the law, that's what had to happen. But if you take these guys, what happened was this guy, that was Ram Singh, that's the older brother. He committed suicide while he was in prison, or somebody suicided him. I don't know which one, and they don't know either. But he did not get to trial. These 4 guys all went to trial. They were fast-tracked, so it was really good because in the U.S., they'd still be sitting in prison 30 years later. But they fast-tracked these guys, and they were all 4 hung. I'm so sorry. Yeah, all of them are hung, and that's a good thing. They're all gone. So I don't think the police could have stopped um, this incident from happening. I think there's a greater problem of in general when we say no, stop telling women they have to behave better. Tell your boys they have to behave better. And yes, of course, as parents, boys should be taught to be respectful, to have care about women, and so on and so forth. And of course, the entire society together, the more we respect women, and the more women respect themselves. And unfortunately, that's a problem sometimes too. That one of the things I'm really anti-pornography because there's a lot of guys in the U.S. who watch tons of pornography on the internet, and there are women who willingly allow themselves to be in these shows, and the men who watch them, and a lot of these are violent, degrading, humiliating. The woman it's not a lovemaking scene. It's a woman being maybe having 4 guys having sex with her, doing all kinds of things to her, and she's being used. And some of it's very violent, some of it's bondage, some of it's just sadistic. It's all kinds of stuff. And a guy who's watching that says to himself, huh, I guess these women don't respect themselves. They want this to happen to them. And that, if they're already on the edge of being not the most stable and healthy mentally guy, it doesn't help that they're watching pornography from the time they're 10 years old and they're watching it repetitively. And that's the way they see women. They see women acting like that. And I have issues with women presenting themselves in such a way that shows that they have no respect for themselves, because we women should want to be respected. So we should want to be educated, to have good behavior. Not that we have to hide in our houses, but that we don't treat ourselves badly. We don't let men treat us badly. We don't act want to be. We don't want to present ourselves as sluts and be treated like sluts. I mean, we should have some dignity ourselves, and then we should teach the men, because the whole society should get together, that women should be treated with respect, and we should have our girls and boys both grow up to do good things and help each other and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, it becomes a huge societal need, and that of course should be taught in the home, it should be taught in the community, it should be taught in our religious centers, it should be taught in our schools, it should be taught everywhere that women should be treated well. That would help, yes. That would help lower that kind of environment that helps breed the negativity and hate of women and the mistreatment of women. That would help. And then the laws have to be changed where it's not tolerated, and something like a brutal rape doesn't get 5 years in prison; it gets life. There's just you don't get a minor pat on the hand because you get put away. No, the laws should be strong enough, and sometimes our laws are weak. So we do need to improve our laws, and of course we do need to have good, well-trained police. We need to have enough police force, and we need to have police who also respect women. And that sometimes there's issues with that. So it is a huge problem. I think the protest in Delhi was a good thing because it brought a lot of things to attention to that Indian women wanted their government to pay attention to and their society to pay attention to. And we have things in the United States that sometimes we need to protest a little bit too on, because we also have issues with that, and it's concerning. So it is a worldwide problem, and I think it was this particular case to just bring it to attention that women should have more rights and more support and more safety. So I'm good with all of that. So okay, I got to itch my nose one more time. I always think it's the lights that do that, like dries out your face or something. Okay, so that is basically what I wanted to talk about tonight with this case. I thought especially the Mukesh part, this creepy dude, just to watch the way his mind worked, and what the excuses he gave and how he tried to get out of it and blame everybody else. I just thought it was his whole statement was so fascinating. I just really wanted to focus on that. But that's in it. So now I'm going to get to your comments here. Okay. David says there was a time in the U.S. that rapists could be executed. Yeah, and some parts of the world that is still acceptable. And it's I point out that there is no such thing as a on-off rapist. You don't just rape once. A rapist is always a serial rapist, because if you cross a line to rape somebody, I'm not, and I always have to point this out, and I know people don't like it, but there is a difference between you go out on a date with somebody, you both get drunk, you both get in bed, and then it goes a little further where one thought was going to go, and then you argue over whether there was no or yes. That's different than a guy's walking down the street and he suddenly grabs a woman on a bus stop, throws her in the bushes, and brutally rapes her. There's a big difference. A total stranger rape where there was no interaction, there was nobody got confused, that kind of thing. I'm okay with execution on it. I am, because that guy's a serial rapist, and if you ever let him out, he'll rape again. But a lot of times those guys maybe they get 10 years and then they get out early after 6 or 7. And guess what they do? They go right back to raping again. And sometimes by the time they catch them the second time, they've done another 20 or 30 women. They've raped that many more. And sometimes they're let out again. It's appalling, absolutely appalling. So I think should be a little stricter. Let's see the remaining 4 were, in this case, although the 17-year-old was released, which shouldn't have happened. Yeah. Well, at least the 4 total adults, were executed. And this guy killed himself or not. And of course, it's interesting that this guy tried to blame the juvenile for doing the worst of the crime. You see, because he knew the juvenile would get less time. This dude's not stupid. He said, this guy's only going to get a short time. If we can get out of being the murderers, we can get a lesser sentence. These guys can get a sentence for rape, and I'm going to get no sentence at all because I was just driving the bus, so. That's actually chemical castration. Castration is an interesting thing because it's still a crime of power and control and doesn't prevent you from being a psychopathic, violent murderer. So you want to. I like that. Shanna says, "Know your worth." Yeah, we should know our worth, and we should not treat ourselves in such a way that that we don't have respect for ourselves. I just find that like every time I see Cardi B do WAP, which I've not often, but I've seen, have looked at it, and I'm like, that is a most humiliating song for women. I don't understand with the things you're saying and the way you're talking about your body. This is not a woman. I got pride because I can do what I want sexually and I can flaunt my sexuality. It doesn't come across like that. It comes across like you acting like it's just, I don't know. I just find it so disrespectful to women, and it appalls me that song is out there. And young girls now, 78-year-olds, are singing the words to that song about their body parts and what the men can do to their body parts. It's just, that's not being a woman who respects herself. It's not. It's a woman who wants to make a lot of money, but it's not a woman who respects herself or respects other women, because when you do that kind of thing, you bring that down on other women as well. So, I just, so let's see. Well, that's probably true. It's only changing very slowly in India and has a long way to go, which is why many women in India are frustrated with the criminal justice system. Yeah, systems are hard to change. It's amazing how slow it is everywhere. I mean, it takes so much to change anything within a system. So, of course, depending on where you're starting is how much harder it is to change and how much longer it's going to take. But I've spent enough time in India now to see there are a lot of changes, and so there's a lot of good things happening. There's still a lot of struggles, but there are some good things happening. So I think we're seeing the women there having an effect, and the men who have been in there to support the women too are having an effect. Let me see what else we have here. Oh, let's see what MK says. Do psychopaths have the same ideas about victim blame? Do psychopaths have the same ideas about victim blaming if the psychopath were ever to be a victim? Oh, no, the psychopath's always a victim, right? Remember, he was a victim. I was just driving a bus, and then these guys acted fools, and I got victimized, and I got nailed with rape and murder. Well, but if they were walking down if a psychopath's walking down the street, if one of these guys, this guy, let's go back to Mukesh. I'm just going to mess with him because he deserves it, even though he's dead. Walking down the street, and a guy jumps out of the bushes, pulls him in there, and rapes him. Oh no, he didn't. He would have done nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing wrong. Oh yeah, no. So that could he on a dime, a psychopath will change the rules. Because they're always his rules. Yeah, they're always his rules. So yeah, that'll change up. So let's see. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened in jail, but outside of the juvenile, they're all dead now. So they're not passing them around any longer. But this guy, he ended up hanging. Who knows what happened prior to that? They put him in, like, I think, isolation. I don't know quite why, because he was annoying. Yeah, that's why I relieved the fork out the death penalty, although it took 7 years. 7 years in the U.S. It would take like 7 or 8 appeals. They'd be probably 80 years old before they even got executed. The U.S. is extraordinarily slow on anything, even with serial killers, where they caught with like bodies in their, they got all the bodies and they got the DNA, and there's no question the guy did it. Appeal after appeal after appeal, and takes forever. So 7 years. I mean, they fast track the case, generally speaking, anyway, but that's really not that bad. The bus driver. This is the guy that owned this. Theoretically, hopefully, it is a guy. That he was the bus driver of the bus during the day. Now, this is then his brother took over supposedly that night and was the one driving, and he was the one raping, in theory. So, or they were sharing, and we don't know. Let's see what else you got here. Oh, this is terribly. Yes, this is extremely tragic. She was in and out of consciousness. She lived for 2 weeks in intensive care. Yeah, and in the Delhi crime movie, this is one of the things I liked about the movie. It was really heartrending because they show her condition. They show the family by her side this whole time. They show what she's going through all of this time. She even gets a statement. She ends up giving a very good statement, even though she's, brutalized and very, very little consciousness. But she managed to have enough consciousness at a certain point to give a very clear statement. And it's just, it was just really, really sad. So that's in the movie, and it gives you the movie gives you a really good feeling for the creepy dudes and for the great work of the police and for what she went through. The only thing I think they gave her male friend kind of a bad deal. I don't know why they kind of came down on him like that. I think they're a little unfair to him. That's my opinion. But then maybe I'm missing something and I don't know about. Let's see. Lori says, "Can't sleep. Glad you're on." Well, I'm good for insomnia. If you're not on another time, if you're not out in Asia somewhere, if you're not in India, watching this live, then you really should be in bed. But you're not. So they gang rape on buses in Bollywood films. I'm not sure what that means. No, it's the lawyer who said the girl and the boy who went to the movies watched too many Bollywood movies and thought they should be able to be like free members of society and walk around and like do what they like. If they weren't watching all those Bollywood movies, they would realize that girl should never leave the house. That lawyer is like the creepiest dude ever. I mean, I swear to God, if he was on the bus, he would probably say, "Give me a shot." That was just not a nice guy. I'm amazed that maybe nobody would take the case. Sometimes you wonder who would take a case this horrible. Well, maybe a guy that's equally as horrible. So I guess that may be why he took the case. Well, I will never understand how 4 guys can be sitting around talking, and this idea comes to mind, and everybody goes along with it. Animals act better than this. It's it's a build up. There is always fantasy before action. There is always a level of you're here and you wouldn't do this, but then you build up to this over time, and you get easier and easier and easier to get to this level where you talk about it, and then you're violent in general. You start harassing girls, and God knows what they did before this. Kind of like the problem with molesters. And then there's a big problem in India on buses where men like to touch women, and so sometimes they have, like, in trains, they'll have a women's car on a train, so you don't have to get harassed by guys. That's a problem. I've had that problem in the U.S. too. I've been touched by guys in a public place in the U.S., and I've been, yeah, it's happened in a few countries I've been in, where I've been in a crowd. Somebody walking behind me going like this on my butt. I'm like, the heck is that? I've got guy come across and just grab my boob, and that's in the U.S. So, but the more crowd you have, the easier it is for that kind of molestation to happen in a public conveyance, especially when it's crowded. Crowded subway car, crowded train, a crowded bus. And you got too many guys on there and a girl stuck in the middle, and some guy's going to be doing something to her, so it's very frustrating. So you got these guys. I'm going to say these guys probably did a lot of that stuff, working their way up, because once it's like, you want to see what you can get away with. I'm going to try this. Oh, look, see, she liked it, or she deserved it. And then you try it again, and then you get comfortable with that, and then you move to the next level. And so and then you find the group. And when you get the group that all want to get together and have the same sort of theory about violence and women and all that stuff, then you have like you're throwing like oil on the fire type of thing. So, yeah. And I forgot what that road is. GB road. I'm trying to think what GB even stands for. I'm not sure. I've been in Delhi, but I'm not familiar with that one. So, somebody said warm honey water. Yeah, it's when you're talking a lot, your voice does dry out here. So, oh, that's an interesting one, huh? I think I can remember a case in India where some guy would get engaged to a girl, take the dowry, and kill her, and then do it all over again. Oh, he's like a Black Widow, but a dude, right? I mean, that's interesting. I got to take a picture of that, because when I talk about sometimes crimes being different in different countries, it's different because there's different ways to enact crimes. So in the U.S., Black Widow is kind of a popular thing, where a woman hooks up with a guy, and then she takes all his money and kills him, and then she marries again, and then she marries again, and like on the fifth husband, the police start going, what happened to the other four husbands? And then they find out they all died in some strange death. She's what's called a Black Widow, like a Black Widow spider who kills all her people she mates with. So this is an interesting change up on that, where to get money, yes, you get engaged, you get the dowry, you marry, get rid of her, and you start all over again, and you keep building up your bank account. That's very interesting. I'll be curious to see if he, I assume they know his name, so I'm going to say he got caught. But yes, every country has interesting, slightly different crimes depending on what works, essentially, what works in what country. Like, for example, one of the popular crimes in Mexico is where you take a taxi, and then the taxi kidnaps you, and they take you to the ATMs, and they make you withdraw money from ATM after ATM. And that's not really done in the U.S., but it was funny because one time there was a case that was similar to that in Florida in the U.S., and I said, I wonder if some guys from Mexico are living down there. And somebody said, oh my God, you're like, are you racist or something? I'm like, no, I've been in Mexico. It's kind of a Mexican crime. And guess what? It turned out to be Mexican guys, It's because it's not a popular crime in the U.S. to drive people around to the ATMs. Now, if you get more and more people that move here from Mexico, it might become more popular. And of course, when you go to Mexico, that's, you got to be careful about the issue about taking, especially unlicensed taxis. So, I mean, every country has its curious crimes, So let's see what else you have to say here, guys. I think I'm getting closer up to the beginning again. So I'm so glad you all were here though, because um, yes, she did. She is so gross. She used to be a stripper. Yeah, we're talking about Cardi B. Cardi B, the singer. The sad thing about it is, she's really actually a good singer, and she can be very pretty. And I'm like, why? Why don't you do the pretty stuff? And you've got a good voice. Sing good stuff and do pretty stuff. Just stop being so hoish. It just upsets me. It's like, don't do that stuff. It's just embarrassing. And I don't want it around my kids and my grandkids and stuff. It's just, oh, okay. Anyway, David says, what proportion of people do you think are true psychopaths? I really don't know. And I don't, there might be some scientific studies out there have tried to analyze how many there are. And a lot of times we don't really know, because if they don't commit violent crimes, they're not necessarily listed as a psychopath. I mean, there's enough people around who'll watch this. They'll watch this video and they'll type down there, I was married to a psychopath, and they might have been. And maybe they got out of the marriage, if they're lucky, not in a body bag. But they're, unless they say they commit some kind of crimes or that then catch them. And then there's there's different kinds of crimes. You got the white collar crime, like Elizabeth Holmes, who just got nailed for fraud for the Theranos thing. I did a video on that. If you haven't seen that, check my video out. I just did a few days ago on Elizabeth Holmes. She exhibits all the behaviors of a psychopath, but she's not violent. But she's a big, huge, fat thief, and became a billionaire off everybody else's money, lying to everyone. Oh. May she get 20 years in prison, because she did get convicted. And then you got serial killers, and then you've got people who, and cartel people and mobsters and, gundas, which is an Indian version of that. And people born into areas with gangs and stuff, and they get into things, and it's like, so it's like, and psychopathy, it's interesting because it's, especially in certain areas when, crime becomes a way of survival sometimes. And, you wonder, are they true psychopaths, or they just don't feel they have any choice and they've just gotten jaded? It's tough. It's a very gray area sometimes. So it's actually kind of hard to say. I'm not a statistician, so, because I don't do well with statistics. So I leave that to other people. But there's too many of them. I can tell you that. There's too many of them, and they ruin people's lives, and they ruin society. So we could use less of them. What? What is that? Oh, we got a bot in here. Is that what you're trying to say? I'm just trying to see if it said anything else down here. Humanimal says 1 in 100. There's probably more. Oh, yeah, I think 1 in 100 might be a little on the light side. But there's narcissism. There's people who are narcissistic but aren't totally psychopathic. It's a continuum. And, it's really a lot of times a matter of opinion, because there's no scientific test to say you're a psychopath. I don't care what people say. There's no chemical thing that makes you a psychopath. It's just a level of narcissism that's to such a degree that you've lost all empathy, and you start exhibiting a very high level of these behaviors that you might not, exhibit so much if you were a little bit lower on the narcissism. We might have a little empathy out there someplace. So it's it's one of those things you sort of, when you get involved around it, you sort of see it, and you sort of know it, but you can't put an exact on it. I think that, unfortunately, when it comes down to psychologists and psychiatrists, a lot of times when psychopaths go in for mental health evaluations, a lot of them, psychologists and psychiatrists, just don't even recognize it. So they let them back out again. They maybe we'll give them some therapy, and then the psychopath just manipulates the therapist, and then it gets out. So especially if they go to prison, and they can lower their term by doing these different therapeutic sessions. They know eventually what to say. So they go, oh, I think that guy's reformed. He hasn't. He's fooling you. But he gets out early, and then he can go back and commit crimes. So psychologists need to learn more about psychopathy, and they need to learn the traits of a psychopath, and they need to learn how not to fall for that stuff, because they in their desire to rehabilitate, in the desire to help, they do not realize that they cannot do it with a psychopath. The only thing you can do with a psychopath is make it worth his while to act one way and not another. It's always got to be self-interest, and that's the only thing that works. He's not going to be reformed. It's just you got to make it worth his while. So there's a good point about that. I think most prisoners are psychopaths. Well, it depends on the level of the crime, but the higher the level of the crime, the more likely, yes. I think there is no such thing as a rapist and a serial killer who's not a psychopath. I think that's a done deal. Or a guy who kills his wife and all his children, probably a psychopath. When you get down to burglary, robbery, fraud, again, you kind of wonder why you're doing that stuff. I mean, what in one's own mind would make us cross a line to do things that hurt other people? And you're breaking the law. It's not like you don't know you're breaking the law. So what makes you step over that line? And so, yeah, I'd say there's probably a fairly high level of that. And, otherwise you wouldn't be doing that stuff. So, hello, everybody. Hey, Coin. Yes, we're here. We're here at the ridiculous hours of the night, well, here's a good question, too. Do you differentiate between antisocial personality disorder and psychopathy? That book of mental disorders, that has like 700,000 different disorders, and it's like I have a clear glass disorder, and I have a fear of wire disorder. I mean, they got so many disorders in there; it's just ridiculous. So a lot of times I think it's just made up stuff. The trying to differentiate. Oh, I didn't see this exhibited, so I'm going to put him in this category. This wasn't exhibited. I'm going to put him. I think a lot of it's just nonsense. I do. And I think every year, because you got a grant, you're going to keep coming up with new stuff to stuff in there. And now they've actually, what's funny is that the what is it? I always forget the name of it. DSM? Diagnostics manual, whatever it is. They actually recently, I think in the last year, reduced the number of different disorders that they had. They reduced it. And so I'm like, okay, so what happened to those disorders? So a year ago, there were like 150 more disorders, and all those 150 disorders have vanished now. So you see, it's a lot of times it's a matter of semantics and, just, I don't know, checking little checklists off so you can then fill out paperwork and so you can have something to say. I don't know. The DSM is getting so, I think it's ridiculous. Yeah, it's, I'm not real fond of it. Let me put it that way. But, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. And I'm sure some psychologists and psychiatrists will think I have no business talking about that. But that was the one reason I didn't ever go into those professions, because, first of all, in profiling, you really only need to know about psychopathy. I don't need to know how to fix people. I don't need to know how to do therapy. And I don't need to know all those other little thingies. I just need to know what I'm looking at when I'm looking at murderers. So I'm pretty basic there. Oh, there you see. Oh, Humanimal says it's 4:47 p.m. on a Saturday. Yeah, there you go. See, this is the point of the show, is that sometimes people can come to the show who can't make that 3 p.m. And I do really like being able to focus on some cases elsewhere in the world. It's just, it's pretty fun. And I want to be able to, I knew that this show wasn't going to get a ton of people from India rolling through. I mean, I'm still fairly new on the internet, on YouTube. I'm fairly new on YouTube. I don't have a huge subscriber rate, so the algorithms aren't like throwing me out to everybody in the world. So it's going to be a slow and steady progress, so I can people can come and to this live and tell me again where, hey, Pat, that's not quite right what you just said about India. I don't mind that at all. Oh, that's funny. Says I'm in Melbourne. Did I say that right? And Humanimal says Brisbane. Ah, okay. See? All right. And then, Sydney too. Whoa, we got Australia here. Woo-hoo. Okay, I'm going to do, I had a request for next time to do the Peter Falconio. Am I saying that right? Peter Falconio case. So that's my plan next time for all the Australians. So yes. 3 states of Australia are represented. How about that? I like that. Yay. So I'm going to do Peter Falconio. I think I just, it's out of the top of my head. Is that correct? Someone who requested that one, I'm not sure. But I'm going to do that one. So I've got a couple weeks to figure that out. And because so many of you are here, I might just have to stay up more often and do this every week. I wasn't too sure because I'm like somewhere around 10 o'clock. I'm like, I don't think I can stay awake. And don't I have a show to do at 12? Oh, there we go. Peter Falconio. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to do that one. And you're going to have to help me out there. See, one of the interesting things, again, is that Australia is one of those places I have not been to. So, I'm not familiar with the geography. I'm not familiar with the culture. I'm not familiar with a lot of things. And so I'm going to be looking at this as well as I can as a criminal profiler. But that's why I love people here live, so that you can say, that's not quite it. You're not quite, you're missing something there. And this is what every detective should do. Even if you're working in your own country, there's subcultures. And so sometimes what happens is a detective won't recognize a subculture. I remember very clearly on when the DC snipers were in town, and I was living in DC at the time. It was a very scary time, and the 2 guys were running around DC sniping people with guns from their cars, and nobody had a clue who they were. But one of the guys had written this letter, and they didn't make it public, and it really ticked me off later because I thought if you'd made that public, that would have helped a lot. I don't know why they didn't make it public, and that's a mistake they made. But when I heard the letter, you know what I said? Within 3 sentences, I said, that guy's from Jamaica. And how did I know that? You know how I knew? Because my ex-husband's Jamaican, and I've seen a lot of letters come in from Jamaica, and I know what the language sounds like. It's Jamaican English, and it's a little different from American English. Well, a lot different, actually. It's a patois, and I mean, as soon as I heard, I'm like, yep, that's Jamaican. I can also recognize deaf language. If I read a letter written by a deaf person who is not a person who has not been highly educated, like a college master's and all that stuff, there's a structure to American Sign Language, which is different from English. And so some deaf people who have not grown up learning English really well will write the style of American Sign Language. And I can see that in a heartbeat. So what happens is if you're a detective on a case and you get a letter, you go, I don't know, I don't know who wrote this. It's because you don't know a subculture. You might have a behavior, and maybe you're working in a particular community. Maybe let's say you're on the police force and you grew up in I don't know, Virginia. You're a white guy from Virginia, and you haven't been around a lot of Hispanics, but now you're going to be in a community in an area where a crime was committed and is 89% Hispanic. You need to talk to the people in that community. Maybe bring in some Hispanic police detectives to talk with you and to talk with the people so that you can figure out what things might have to do with the culture and the community that you're just missing. You're just missing. I mean, you just don't see it because you're not familiar with that particular culture. So I think that's real important for detectives and for profilers. Anybody working investigations just has to know that's a weakness that all of us have, because there's no way in God's earth we're going to know every subculture around us, So, yeah, same thing is true in India. So many states in India, so many different areas. That culture is not the same all the way through India. There's lots of subcultures there. So if you're from Punjab, you may have a different viewpoint and actions and behaviors than somebody, from Andhra Pradesh. Two different things. So they're different behaviors, and so you want to get some help with that so you can understand what you're looking at rather than overlook something and not be able to solve a case. So, so, um, so what? I'm trying to figure out. I'm not quite sure what some of these comments are. I can't figure them out. Okay. I am not sure at all. Oh my goodness. So, um, a few of these I'm just leaving in the chat room because I think it's funny, but I'm not going to put them on the screen. Let's see. MK says, I watch a lot of true crime channels and yours was recommended. Really? So maybe the algorithm is working for you. It's only going to grow for you. You're so interesting. Oh, thank you very much. Well, YouTube is really, really tough. And let me tell you, it is absolutely very tough, very stressful, and very, very hard to fight with the algorithms and all of that because there are 30 million channels, and some people have been here a long time and have really worked hard, and they're the light years ahead of me as far as having a channel that is successful, and has been able to get enough support to survive. And I just I would have loved to have Indians be here today. I mean, watching this show and saying, oh my gosh, this is neat. She's talking about this particular case. I'm getting to know Pat Brown. Pat Brown's criminal profile has been to India, and I've done seminar in India. And it would be I'd love to know some detectives in India because I've been coronavirus. I haven't been able to go back for a few years. So I like to reach out across the world, meeting detectives, meeting students of criminal justice, and meeting any people who are interested in crime scene analysis and profiling. And so, I would have loved to have more people from India here, but I knew it was going to be unlikely because this is it's the beginning of this. So I'm just thrilled that you guys who I like so much actually showed up. I mean, it's like, I thought I was going to be here by myself going, blah, blah, blah. It's like my live show and there's no living people with me. So this has been really cool. So you've made it so much easier for me. I tell you. That's interesting. When you talk openly about topics, there's a lot of censorship. Because I don't censor words, I don't get promoted. Yeah, well, I don't censor much either. And so, I mean, I get demonetized. I don't know if the algorithm also chucks me out. I have no idea how that works. Evelina says, nice earrings. Thank you. These I bought in Hyderabad. See the pearls in them? They come from South India. So I absolutely love Indian jewelry. So, and I love all the clothing. So I'm so sad I have no place to wear anything pretty right now because I pretty much can't leave the darn house, It sucks. Use hashtags. I do use hashtags. I've done all the hashtags and all that stuff. It really just, it's eventually, a channel can grow if you keep working very hard at it. And I want people to, I just say it's very exciting to me when people can, communicate with me over cases. And that's what I like so much about doing YouTube, because this is the first time all that television I did for all those years, I never got to communicate with anybody hardly at all. I mean, a little bits here and a little bit there, but not like this. This is a whole different world. It's great. Oh, aren't you nice? Thank you very much. David just gave me $5 to help the channel. I keep forgetting I have the super sticker thing, the super chat. I keep forgetting to mention it, but thank you. That does indeed help me out a great deal. So yeah, little by little, I'm hoping to keep the channel going. So it is 2022 now, and I started the year with coronavirus, which is so fun. And so I've been stuck in the house for like 10 days now, and we also have 2 snowstorms. It's been fun. So far the year's going really well. So I'm actually, it was actually a relief to be able to do these shows, because I did 3 shows this week and I felt kind of crummy before I did the shows, but once I got here and I saw all my friends, I feel a lot better, and I'm not as bored as just sitting there staring at the wall. So, Thank you for a great show, Pat. I'm going to have to go to sleep. My little guy will be up in an hour. Oh, good idea. I'm going to head there in a few seconds myself. Good night. So the 2.9 is already excellent. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah. It's yeah, we'll see. It's say it's it's a tough business, YouTube. People don't realize, the massive amount of hours. It's a full-time job. And the more we want to put out, the more full-time job it is. And the only advantage I have is that I don't edit, because editing would take me another 20 hours a week, and I'd hang myself if I had to do editing. So I just wing it. I'm going to wing it, and what happens because I can't do the editing stuff. And I like the live because, when I do the few shows that I do just straight at the camera, it's never as much fun as when I have you guys here. So, yeah. Great show as always. Thank you very much. I am feeling better, Lisa. Yeah, this is absolutely true, by the way. Wait, the new body language guy is obsessed with the royals, especially one of the couples. Yes, this is true. He actually started with that. You see, his whole thing began with the royals, and now he's added in some true crime things and court stuff. As I said, I don't know the guy's background, and I know he's got the big whole British royal thing going, especially the couple you're talking about. And but when he explains things about like he did the Amber Heard thing, he did the Madeleine McCann thing, I'm like, it's really good at explaining these things. And I like what he does when he explains these things. So, I always feel like there's a number of ways to learn things. And as long as I think I'm learning something or somebody else will learn something from that, I'm like, it's good to take a listen to. I enjoyed his stuff so far. So I'm not into the royals, so I'm not going to spend my time the gossipy stuff. I could care less about, but people like that stuff, and that's how sometimes you make money. So that's the way it works. Oh, thank you very much, Vivian. I don't observe. I prefer Logan on the channel called Observe. I will. Okay, I'm going to take a picture of that. I'm going to check that out because I do not know that one. I'm not familiar with it. And a lot of this, I've seen there's a lot of different body language people and people discussing crimes. And I have a very different viewpoint because I'm coming from a criminal profiling viewpoint rather than a personal viewpoint. A lot of people go, oh, I like the way, I see it in a very different way. So I'm probably extremely particular about certain things and why I think these things are important. And one of the things that I'm often bothered by is when I find that there's these descriptions that there's an explanation, but when you're finished with the explanation, you really don't know what they said. It's like fancier terminologies and stuff that I'm like, I don't know that that's really true. And it's just, to me, it's too vague. I like things where it's really clear as to what the person is saying. That's why I always talk about Ken Maines, because he's very clear when he describes, this is why I think this. But I've listened to other channels. I'm thinking, I can listen to you for an entire hour and I still don't really know how you came to your conclusions or why. Sometimes it's a lot of buzzwords, a lot of fancy stuff. And it sounds real intelligent and you sound like you have a PhD or that you've been in the FBI for 20 years, but I don't understand what you're trying to actually say. Maybe because you're not really saying anything, but you sound like you are, you sound like one of those people that's very intelligent and very professional, and well, he must know something, but we just can't figure out what it is. And he knows more than us and we'll never understand it. No, I want you, and when I speak here, I want you to be able to understand everything I say. And if I say stuff here and it don't make sense to you and you think, wow, that's because Pat Brown is just so smart and she's just a criminal profiler and she just must read the minds of criminals. No, I'm just full of shit then. So, so I want it to be clear. So, oh, you've actually been watching him for the royal content. Well, there you go. So, see, somebody likes the royal content. Oh my God. Too Danish. Derek. Sure. Oh, so if it's Danish. Well, then you just swallow the last sentence. I lived in Denmark for 6 months, and it is a hard language. Dirk Short, the super cheesy guy. I don't know. I'm not sure about that one. So yeah, this MK says I understand it all. That's what I try. That's my whole point. I like to make things. I mean, things shouldn't be that hard. My whole point is always this: criminal profiling is often presented as though it's some kind of uh, like criminal profiles are somehow gods of profiling, that they've worked so many cases they can look at a case and just say this and this and that. I just know this and this, and he's got this educational level, and he's got anger retaliatory, blah, 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 blah. And the thing is, you ask them, explain that, and they can't explain how they got it. Well, if you can't explain something, it's no good. Something that's scientific, you can explain. If you're cooking, you either use a recipe, say, this is the recipe for the dish I'm making. If you're not using a recipe, you should be able to explain, well, what I'm doing is frying up the onions, and then I'm going to put in flour and make a roux. And I'm showing you how to do that. You shouldn't be able to say, oh, I made this thing and I can't explain how it's made. That's ridiculous. You use certain ingredients, you do certain techniques, you make something. Same thing is true with profiling. You look at evidence, you study it, you study behavior, you study the physical evidence, and you say, this is what this means. Or, why, at least I'm going to explain it. If I can't explain it, I'm full of crap. So anyway, so that's it. So anyway, Coin says, I love you, Pat. I'm going to sleep. Me too. I think that's a great idea. So anyway, thank you all for being here. I really was a surprise for me tonight. So that was great. And I hope anybody from India who watches this, please do put your comments below too. Anybody who's not from India can also put comments below, but please put comments below, especially if you would like for me to know something. Because I'm going to do more cases from India. I'm going to do more cases from around the world. And the more I learn and know, the better I can do, at least explaining things and not, being off on something to the point where you're like, really? You just said that about my country? So, and we don't want that to happen. So, yeah. I say I don't like people talking crap about my country. I don't want to talk crap about somebody else's country and be completely wrong. It's like, so, but I enjoyed all of you being here, and it was absolutely fantastic. And I will be doing Casey Anthony on Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to be talking about this is the case for me, which showed why we need to get rid of the civilian jury system. And it was the case where when I heard the verdict, I still remember it to this day. I remember I opened up the door to my living room, walked out on the porch. I was so angry. I had to walk out of the house, walk away from the television set. I was livid, absolutely livid. And so that always stuck in my mind at one moment in time of how much that ticked me off. So I'm going to talk about the case. I'm going to talk about what happened with, in the case that was, what kind of evidence was there. Did the prosecution fail to do their job? Was that why she got off? Was Jose Baez and his defense really good? Or is the jury simply unable to make a reasonable determination because they don't have the skills to do so? So I'm going to talk about Casey Anthony on Sunday at 3 p.m. So at any rate, put comments down below. Please do that, and I will I'll cough my way out of here. Oh my God. And I'll see you next time. Thank you for coming.